What's up, you champions? JR Marks here. Yes. Shout out to D-Crack and Z-Man. Yes. And appreciate all of you stopping by, original champions and new, for my recent Hangout stream upload. Much obliged. This time I'm going to be reacting something to different. You guys know I'm all into the nice things in life. Not that I'm rich or anything, I'm not, I've just been around it. But now we're going to react to the highest echelons of sophistication, life status. One of the greatest, I guess somewhat new to the aristocratic class, the Rothschilds family and their ancestry home of waddesdon. Waddesdon? Either way, I've seen a snippet of this and it looks amazing. Love architecture and houses and elegant things. But anyway, let's just get into it. I'm looking forward to this.
What's it like being a Rothschild? Well, of course, I'm the wrong person to ask because I was born a Rothschild and I'm still a Rothschild, so I don't know what it's like to be anyone else. So, I think you become aware the name has a kind of pulling power, and the name sometimes gets a second take. And when I was younger, I found that very off-putting because I didn't feel that I lived up to this extraordinary reputation. I didn't live up to the magnificence. I didn't feel I was particularly good at anything. So I think it took me to get older and to establish my own career then to see it actually as quite an honour, really, to be part of this extraordinary tradition.
Frankfurt of 1628.
The story really begins in Frankfurt, in the Jewish ghetto in the city, and the name Rothschild comes from the name of the house of their ancestors, which was the House of the Red Shield. So the dynasty was really established by Mayor Amschel Rothschild, who was born in 1743 or 1744, and he set up home in Frankfurt. And he married a member of another Jewish family called Gütle Schnapper, and between them they had 19 children, of which 10 survived, 5 girls and 5 boys.
So the Judengasse was in Frankfurt, and it was built to house originally, I think it was something like 60 Jewish families, and within a matter of decades, there were several hundred families. There were thousands of people living in a street that was a few yards wide, and I think it was about 100 yards long. The houses were so densely packed together that light hardly got in there. And now my family, the Rothschilds, lived in a house that was 14 feet wide. So you can imagine it was a very cramped environment. And you can also imagine what the impetus was to get out of there.
Can you imagine?
It's very hard to imagine the extent of the restrictions. They had to spend every night in the ghetto. They had to wear clothes.
Lord Rothschild, OMGBE. He is still the current, what do you call it, benefactor of the Rothschild fortune or trust fund, whatever you want to call it. I love his speaking voice. Lord Rothschild, of benefactor and Baron Lord Rothschild of the family, and the many institutions of the family name.
Which identified them as Jews, and the parks had outside them a notice saying, "No pigs, no Jews." So it was an incredibly restrictive society, and therefore astonishing that Mayer Amschel Rothschild was able to do what he did. Jews were allowed to deal in coins, and coins were a big thing at that time because you had so many small states in Germany and elsewhere that they were collected. And somehow Mayer Amschel Rothschild became friendly with the Prince of Hesse and succeeded in first selling him coins, and then he was formally appointed as the coin advisor to the...
Now they are known as aristocratic, even though technically they weren't, because they're Jewish, and the aristocrats of the time were British. But they became, well, they were included in the aristocratic version. Part of it, which is great, good for them, as well as they should be. The Rothschilds have been the pillars of many societies, specifically the Westerns, making sure order, or at least they've tried to make sure things are well balanced. I would love to tour Waddesdon, see all the amazing rooms and furniture and ornaments and paintings. And in fact, the Rothschilds, I don't know if it's Waddesdon or one of their other properties around the world or wherever it is, but they've got like one of the most amazing collections of antique relics and paintings and this and that. Maybe one day I'll see it.
Hi.
Ah, coffee has arrived. Thank you very much. Cheers to the Rothschilds. Without them, I think the world would be 10 times worse off than it ever has been. Especially in the last century.
Prince of Hesse. So that was the big breakthrough.
The business really expanded when Meyer Amschel brought his 5 sons into the family firm. And he did that by keeping one of them, Amschel, in Frankfurt, and the other 4 brothers went out to establish branches of what became the Rothschild Bank in other European capitals. So Nathan went to London, James went to Paris, Salomon went to Vienna, and Karl went to Naples.
They were an enormously close family. They, in effect, escaped from the ghetto to those 5 capitals in Europe. And it was really the first time that there'd been a family that worked within a European community. And they had family rules about how they conducted their business. They almost shared everything in the early days and worked together with a brilliant success.
The really famous example of a Rothschild success is the way in which they managed to provide cash for Wellington so that he could fund his armies in the run-up to Waterloo. And that really...
Not to mention, the Rothschilds also helped the great legendary Winston Churchill throughout his life with his expenses. Sure kept his cigar collection up. And also helped him, I believe they helped Winston Churchill and the Gurion. I forget the name. I hate when I forget shit, but the name of the first leader of Israel when the state was established in the late 40s. It was after World War II, at least, around that time. Once peace returned to the world and things were rebuilt. The Rothschilds should have more credit to their name than they have, because very important family in the most very important moments of history.
Established them as a kind of an international player in financial terms. And a lot of that success was rooted in their ability to communicate. They had an incredibly sophisticated network, secret network of communication, which meant that they were able to get news from one brother to the other. So much so, in fact, that the news of Wellington's victory at Waterloo arrived with Nathan 24 hours before the official news arrived with the British government.
By the middle of the 19th century, the Rothschilds become established members of British society. They were involved in finance and politics. And Nathan's son Lionel, in 1847, was elected as MP for the City of London, but he wasn't, as a practising Jew, allowed to take his seat in Parliament for another 11 years, until 1858, when an act was passed removing the bar to Jews taking the oath of allegiance. Lionel's son, Natty, was also very involved in politics. He gave advice to the government on financial matters, and in 1885 he was made the first Lord Rothschild, the first Baron Rothschild of Tring, and in doing so he became the first Jewish peer to take a seat in the House of Lords, following in his father's footsteps, I guess, within the political arena.
There's an assumption that most Rothschilds are bankers, because of course that's what we were known for, and of course that's how our fortune was made. But over the centuries we've diversified, and so my grandfather Victor and my great aunt Miriam were very, very distinguished scientists. My great aunt Nika was a terrific kind of jazz patron. My aunts Emma and Victoria are academics. My niece Lily rides horses for England. My sister Beth is a gardener. We're a very, very diverse group. Banking remains, if you like, the thing we're best known for, but it's not necessarily the thing we're most proud of.
I think there's a very strong tradition of philanthropy amongst the Rothschild family. And that's
successful in every
itself, not only
different
in support
kinds of
local
work,
institutions, but in particular towards good Jewish causes. And that's been a very strong accord between the Rothschilds, I think, even to this day.
The family has had lots of different interests in all sorts of different fields. I think the famous ones are probably wine, and of course the ownership of the two great Bordeaux vineyards,
Lovely
Chateau
aged
Rothschild
wine.
and Chateau Lafite Rothschild, which are still in family ownership, which were acquired in the 19th century. And then there's racing. A lot of members of the family were very...
I don't remember what it was called, but I saw another video of the Great Family, a more recent one, where I guess they had like an art exhibition of trees that were made out of glass bottles. Whatever that was very cool to see.
There are quite a lot of classic winners, and of course the art collections, which are possibly the most famous aspect of all, and Waddesdon is a very good example of that. The extraordinary collections of 18th century furniture and paintings, very much in what's called the Rothschild style.
The original founding father, N.M. Rothschild, said that Rothschild women could only be employed as archivists or bookkeepers. So that rather narrowed down a woman's role in the family. So they had to find other ways. And one of
these two, I don't know if they're trees or they're cool sculptures made out of bottles. I think that's what they were.
Disparate parts of the family, but it was his sister Alice who actually made sure that the collection stayed together. And Alice was an extraordinary woman. She was the person who introduced the very exacting standards. So the collection had to be put to bed over the winter. You could only touch something if you were wearing gloves.
And priceless artifacts got to be handled with care.
She would go down to the borders and tell you, that was slightly, that needs deadheading, or that's the wrong colour, pink or something. And she added actually to the collection in her own way. Another great heroine here is Dolly, or Mrs. James Rothschild, who I knew when I was a child, and they used to kind of call up, Mrs. James is coming.
Sister and baby are here.
And she would arrive with a pug dog under her arm, and she would walk around the house, and there wasn't a detail that she didn't miss. And actually, it's those standards which those two women instilled in the house, which are still carried out on a day-to-day basis. And it's those standards, I think, which maintain the standard of excellence that
leave it to strong women to keep the traditions going.
There was the transition period from being a private house to becoming part of the National Trust with a very strong family influence, both in terms of works of art in the house and the property outside. When my late cousin, who left me responsibility for carrying on her work, carried out that transfer, that change, we opened the public and we had 12,000 visitors. Today we have 450,000. We've also added significantly to the collection here. We've made acquisitions which complement it, like, for example, the painting by Chardin. We do exhibitions which are both thoughtful and academic, and at the same time which have a popular appeal. There's a deep involvement here from our family, both from my daughter Hannah and from myself and from other members.
I think with privilege comes responsibility, and if you're lucky enough, which I am and have been, to have been born into a family
Words
where
to live by.
there is so much opportunity, and you're surrounded by so many beautiful things, that the opportunity to share that beyond yourself and the opportunity to explain the stories and put it into a wider context, I think, is something which I'm actually genuinely very excited by.
Bloody facial hair sprouting, I got a bloody itchy. There we go. Love that. Definitely going to react to more of that. The old money families. Rothschilds must be one of the last few still going. But, either way, hope you all enjoyed that reaction. Different to what I've normally react to, but, I like to create more variety, keep it fresh and entertaining for you champion subscribers. I'll see you again tomorrow for another gameplay and hangout stream.